Hey, this is Anand, and I'm the founder of JustLockedIn. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how to study for the SAT, what makes SAT so hard, and how JustLockedIn can help you get the top score that you're aiming for. All right, so let's get started. So this is the score report from the College Board Blue Book app. This is for a practice test where the student got a 1310. All right. The score report is pretty useful. It's got my competency grades across the different sections, and then the answers that the student got wrong. All of that is good stuff. Now, if you took a test in any of the other SAT prep websites, or if you are part of an SAT course, their score reports are going to look pretty similar too, right? It may have a little bit more information, but they're all structured pretty similarly. But if I were the student, this is the question that I would have, right? And which is, hey, I got a 1310. Now, how do I increase my score to a 1450, or maybe from a 1450 from a 1520 later, which is my target score? Now, how do I make this progression, right? So this report does give me some information here, and which is, hey, I have some room for improvement here, and perhaps these two topics, right? But the problem is, all of these are pretty vast topics. Like algebra is pretty vast, and craft and structure vast, English grammar here, right? Vast. Topics, and where I want to be focusing all my time and effort on in order to increase my score is the gap, right? So how do I figure out what these gaps are, right? So one of the things that I would naturally do is go look at the questions that I got wrong, and then see how that problem has to be solved, or the question needs to be answered, and then perhaps I would go one step up and perhaps practice the whole topic, right? But the point is, that is all a lot of guesswork, right? And topics are still pretty vast, right? And you are essentially trying to, quote unquote, boil the ocean, right? And you're not still getting to the concepts that you need to be spending all your time focusing on, right? So that is a problem. And this is the reason why I see students taking test after test after test, but then their scores really don't improve much. There is just the statistical variance, right? But which is not really improvement, right? So how do you break yourself out of this loop, right? So this is where JustLockedIn helps, right? So what we did at JustLockedIn is we analyzed thousands of SAT questions, and then we extracted all the concepts that the SAT tests, and not just that, but also how the SAT tests these concepts, right? All the different all the different variations, or the different ways in which each of these concepts get tested. Okay, so we call them patterns, right? So patterns are not shortcuts or hacks, as the name might suggest. Patterns are really concepts and all the different ways in which a concept can be tested on the SAT. All right. So when you go to the JustLockedIn app, this is all available for free, right? You go to pattern strategies, and let's take algebra, for example, right? Algebra has about 25 plus patterns here, right? And take one of these patterns as an example, right? Figuring out how many solutions an equation has. For example, here, does it have one solution, or zero solutions, or infinite solutions, right? I mean, this is one of those classic question types that trip a lot of students up on the test, right? And if you practice them, then these are really easy points, right? So JustLockedIn has broken down pretty much every topic into its component patterns, and we have about 120 patterns that cover pretty much every concept, and the testing variation of those concepts across the SAT. All right. So the way we use that is, when you take a test on JustLockedIn, this is how your test report is going to look like, right? It's going to have your raw score, and it's got your pacing information. Pacing is very important, right? So it's as important as accuracy. Like, for example, take this question here where the student spent almost 3 minutes, right? And it's worth reviewing this question, right? So when you click on this question, not only do you get the explanation, but you can actually go and click on this green button here, and then practice the entire pattern, right? Not only this concept, but also all the different ways in which this particular concept can get tested, right? I mean, this is actually translating a real world scenario into an inequality, which is actually a pretty important topic, right? So this is how patterns work, and we call this active review, right? So look at what you've done, right? So you have taken a test and you got some questions wrong, and for each question you review the answer, and then you learn the concept and practice all the ways in which that concept can be tested on the SAT. So this is the most powerful move that you can make to raise your score. And that's exactly what JustLockedIn is designed to provide you with, right? It has all the tools that helps you do. Okay. Now I talked about all the free stuff, right? So what you can do is go to justlockedin.com/patterns, right? We got 4 curated paths depending on your situation, right? Like for example, hey, just 1 week before the test, right? You can go review all the high priority patterns and the testing variations, right? And similarly, you have that for math, for reading, and then hey, you are 1 month before the exam, what it is that you need to plan for and practice. So you have all this information here available for free. You can review every pattern. Like for example, when I click on this pattern, it'll actually tell you what that pattern entails, what the questions look like, and it'll also tell you what easy questions look like, hard questions look like, and medium difficulty questions look like. What are all the gotchas and the pitfalls and the traps that kind of make people trip up on those questions, right? So you have all of that information, and it's all available for free. All right. So in addition to this, right, this whole concept works really well when you execute it as a system, and that's really what JustLockedIn is designed to provide, right? So we have over 10,000 questions that are organized according to the different patterns, and then we have literally an unlimited number of tests that you can take. And like I showed you, after you take the test, you'll get information on what patterns are suppressing your score, and you get an opportunity to go and practice those patterns and do focused, targeted work, right? And that is what raises your score, right? And we made JustLockedIn extremely or super accessible, right? And it costs, in most cases, it costs less than what it takes to register for the SAT exam, right? So our fee is less than the SAT registration fee in most cases. Okay, so we've really removed cost as a factor, right? So do that, and once you start with JustLockedIn, one of the first things that you would do is take a diagnostic test, right? So we have a diagnostic test for math and 15 questions each. That's it. Just about 20 minutes for each diagnostic. And when you do that, you get your scale score out of 1600. It's an indicative score, but it serves as a great baseline. And then most importantly, you get your first set of patterns you need to be working on, right? And we remove all guesswork. You get a 30-step plan that step-by-step introduces you to all the patterns and and gives you all the practice that you need to master each pattern. And we've spaced it out so that you can complete that within a month, and you can actually put your test date there, and the plan will automatically adapt to spacing. And so that's JustLockedIn in a nutshell. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you in another one. All right, thank you.